Hey guys, for today's video, we're going to be continuing our gray transformation using blonde solutions. So if you're wondering how to tackle this service, then keep watching. You guys can follow me over on Instagram at Christy@thecottage.
Hey guys, so for my client that I'm doing today, we've been doing gray transformation. Transformation, is that the right word? I don't know. Anyways, so about a year ago, we started blending into gray. Maybe a little bit less than a year ago, and so we have probably a few times now done her highlights, but I know a lot of people have been asking me to do like a gray blending video, so that's what this is going to be. Normally I use my Schwarzkopf Blonde Me, but because I really like the way that the Blonde Solutions lifts, and I'm extremely selective with who I use that on because it is expensive and it's hard to come by. People ask, you have to order it. There's only select places where you can actually go in store and purchase. So I really don't use it that often. The reason why I want to use it today because I think it'll be really good for gray blending because it lifts to white and it kind of tones down the hair as it's lifting. So because my client has previous color on her hair, and she does a lot of straightening her hair because it's naturally curly, her hair can tend to get a little warm in some areas. So I feel like if I use the blonde solutions, it will be really good at lifting to a nice, like cooler, whiter tone versus like a warmer tone, just because my client has gray hair and we're working on blending it with blonde highlights. So having the gray and silver with like yellow tones or warmer tones as the blonde lifts doesn't necessarily look that great. Even if we tone it, the toner fades and it can fade to like a warmer color. So I feel like if I use the blonde solutions, then that will kind of prevent that from happening. So that's what we're going to use today. And also I want to say that normally I would only use 20 volume, but I know Daniel, who is Hair Like a Boss on Instagram, who I love. He's amazing. He's like my idol. His work is fabulous. I know he says that their lift is a little bit more gentle. So for my client today, I'm going to use 35 volume.
So it's kind of hard to see, but when I'm scooping the bleach out, you'll be able to see little specks in there. And those are different pigments that kind of help tone the hair as it's lifting. And you really have to be cautious to make sure that you're blending those out. Ugh, blending. We talk so much about blending and doing hair and everything. I meant mixing, guys, okay? You know what I'm talking about. Also, the way to mix this is like 1 to 1 to 1.5 or so, because it is a very thick bleach. The thing about this bleach is that you really have to get in there and mix it up. It takes about 5 minutes to mix it thoroughly. The thing is that if you're lifting and if the hair is already previously blonde, you'll notice the more and more that I mix this, that the whiter it will get and it will kind of lose the blue, the dramatic blue tone to it. It will kind of soften down a little bit. You can see that right there. It's kind of softening up. The problem is if there's little areas, like if you're using a brush, and sometimes if you use a brush, you can't really squish out all of the developer. So what happens is especially if you're on somebody that has blonde hair, if that very blue pigment that doesn't blend away very well, like you can see that kind of stuff, that tells me that it's not mixed up good enough, and it will actually deposit like a little blue tone onto the blonde hair. So you really have to make sure that you're mixing up really good to get rid of any of those little pigments that are in there. After I have this mixed up, for the most part, I'll go through with my brush and kind of smash it in or whatever, because you can see like some of those bluer spots in there. So you really got to make sure that it's mixed up really, really good. Okay, so I wanted to show you her transformation from the start. So that's where we started. This was like the second time or the very first time we did her hair. And then we've been slowly and every now and then just kind of redoing the highlights. And I actually have a video on that whole service that I will link in the description if you're interested in watching how to do like a blonde or a gray transformation from the start, and kind of how to go about that service with blending in the roots and everything. So anyways, here's her hair right now and where we're at. And we're going to be doing the highlights that we normally do around the hairline, except for because the blonde that we'll be doing really matches what her color already is. I'm just going to be doing some very, very fine baby lights, and I'm probably going to be doing about 4 of these on her hairline, but because the view from this angle isn't very good, I'm just going to pop a few in and then switch to the other side. All right, so we're going to continue doing the sides of her hairline foils, and I feel like her hair doesn't really grow out with any line of demarcation. Like you can see here when I pull her hair back, like you really can't tell where her last highlights were or anything, just because it blends so good with her natural. And I feel like usually if you're doing a gray blending client, they want to feel more as if they're blonde, but have it blend with their silver or gray or whatever. So that's why I like to go through and do some highlights, because I want her to feel bright enough to where she's more like a very cool blonde, but enough to where it blends with her color and to where she doesn't feel like she's necessarily gray. So you can see like those end color, the ends of her hair, how they're still kind of warm. That is what the Blonde Solutions is gonna really help with, to help kind of tone that out and minimize that as the toner fades. She'll still have like a really nice bright blonde color, and she still actually has lots of dimension in her hair, a lot of that natural darker color, but it's a very cool darker shade of gray. So having these highlights in there and everything is still going to give her dimension. She's still going to feel like she has blonde highlights, but they're just going to blend so much better with her natural color. And I think that's just the biggest thing with clients that want to work on going gray, is that they want to blend with their natural color, but they want to feel more like as if their hair was blonde naturally versus just silvery color. So that's where it's kind of, you have to really make sure you're formulating to create like a nice cool blonde, but not like super ashy, because then it might blend too much with their gray and then they just feel like they're gray and silver all over versus like a nice cool blonde. Anyways, we're gonna get into like her money piece area, and we're not really doing it too bright and chunky or anything, but we're just doing like 2 weaves back to back. Here you can see that I'm kind of starting to take my sectioning like diagonally back. And so I'm going to start working my way up the side of her head. And I'm still kind of doing a fine weave, but they are going to be a little bit heavier as I'm underneath. And this is because I still want to make sure that I'm brightening up through the ends enough and blending really good with her roots. But I feel like if we're able to lighten it a little bit more, like not too heavy, that will kind of help soften everything up and blend it a little bit better. You can see that she is very, very light underneath. So I feel like it's okay for me to do it a little bit heavier of a weave down in this area because everything is going to blend really nicely and she's not going to have very heavy grow out. And I feel like when you do colors like this, it's not like one pattern fits all, one weave or one section fits all. Like you kind of have to really be careful on what the client wants and go from there. Because she has a lot of lighter gray silver underneath, I'm okay with doing a little bit heavier of a weave underneath. But I know when I get up to the top, she doesn't really have that much lightness in this area. So I'm just kind of transitioning into doing like a really fine baby light weave in the top section because I don't want it to be too bright as it is underneath. And that's kind of just something that you have to be aware of with every different client that you're doing, is that you are trying to mimic what their natural pattern is, where the natural white silvery hair is versus like the dark color. So if somebody has like really heavy silvery color all over, then you could probably go in a little bit heavier handed. But if they have a lot of dark that they're trying to maintain, then you might want to transition to like a really fine baby light just to give them a little bit of brightness, but also to make sure that it doesn't grow out too heavy and that they don't really have a big line of demarcation. So as I'm getting closer to where she parts her hair, I'm going to be taking less of a subsection, and that's because wherever like her part generally falls on the same side, but we all know like you're not going to grab every single same hair every single time. So I'm kind of taking a much finer baby light, probably within like 1.5 to 2 inches of a section, and I'm packing these foils in a little bit tighter. I'm basically not doing a subsection at all. I'm just going to do a weave and then, you know, do my foils on top of that, and I'm not going to do much of a subsection at all, just because I want to make sure that everything blends really nicely. And if she parts her hair within that like 1.5 inch range on that side of her head, then I'll know wherever the hair falls that she has coverage of the highlights. Where if you do like a 1/4 inch subsection every single time, what if they part their hair that one day where that subsection falls and now it looks like all the highlights fall onto one side of the part versus none on the other side? So if you kind of do thinner weaves, less of a subsection, then you know wherever their hair falls, they're gonna have equal coverage. And I know that I ramble, so if I like talk in circles sometimes, then sorry. So actually right here, you can see just how little of a subsection that I'm leaving in between. There's that one foil. I barely took a weave, a very thin slice, weaved it out, and I'm placing that foil right on top of it. So that was a really good area to show you guys of how minimal of hair I'm leaving in between. But on top of it, I'm also doing very fine weave of the hair that I'm leaving out, so that way she's not going to get overly blonde in that one section because the hair is so fine that I am lightening. All right, and now we are back onto this side, and I feel like you might be able to see a little bit better the foiling, but since you guys just saw everything on that side, I'm not really gonna show the whole application over here because I don't want to bore you. So I'm just gonna throw a few foils in and let the video play. All right, so I cut out quite a big chunk of that foiling because, you know, I don't know if that gets boring or not, but so we're just gonna finish these last few little foils where we will meet in the center, and then we will switch over to the very back. When I get to the back area, because those diagonal foils kind of cover a lot of the back crown on the sides, I really only have to throw a few of these foils, and I don't drop it down too low to the flow. You know what? If you weren't a 2000s kid growing up in your 20s, then I don't want to hear it, okay? Mariah Carey, you have my heart. So I'm just going to throw in like a few extra foils in this area, probably like maybe 3 or 4 at the most, maybe a little bit more, but I usually don't pack them in too much. I usually just do a little bit, but because I want to make sure that she like has just enough of a blend, I'm still gonna continue with like doing a finer weave. I feel like in this back section her hair is a little bit darker, so I don't want to do too heavy of a highlight or anything, so the subsections are going to be a little bit bigger in between. All right, so when I was foiling her hair, I was actually going to stop at that last foil, but then I realized that I don't want this little triangle part right here. I don't know how the hair is going to fall really, so I just wanted to throw a few extra foils in here just to make sure that we have that coverage. I lied. So I know I said I normally do like 3 or 4. Okay. I know I did not do 3 or 4. I know I did like 7 or 8 or something, but these top foils that I'm doing, there's like 3 hairs. Okay. Does it really count? It doesn't count. But those are just the fine pieces of detail work that you have to do sometimes just to make sure that everything blends and looks nice. So one of the things that she said that she was concerned about was that she feels like the underneath still has a lot of dark in it. And that's because we really haven't gone through and done a lot of lightening through this area. Maybe like the picture that I showed you at the very beginning, but every time that we've kind of come through it, maybe like 2 times since then that we've done her just like baby lights to blend her roots a little bit more, like we haven't really come down in this area. So when her hair falls forward, it does kind of feel kind of dark and a lot of that warm tone is still in there. So to kind of fix that today, I'm just gonna go through for like when she pulls her hair up, I'm just gonna go through and do like 2 weaves on either side of the back of her head and then straight across the bottom at the nape of her neck. And then after that, we'll go through and do like paint some of these dropout sections. All right, so we're finishing up our application and we're gonna go through and just paint through these ends. And I feel like the bleach has been sitting for a while, so it's pretty gentle on her hair. It's gonna give it good lift, but it's not gonna be like, you know, over damaging or anything. So I'm just gonna go through, kind of really focus on this underneath area where she feels like it's a little bit darker or warmer, and paint through some of these pieces. And that's kind of what you have to do when you're doing like a gray blending. Sometimes you have to keep going through over and over again through the different sessions that you're doing, and just keep going through these ends, because that warmth is going to stay there for a while. It's going to take a few times for you to have to go through and bleach it out. And that's just something that you have to explain to your client. That pigment is going to be hard to break through. It's always going to go back to warm. You know, even using the blonde solutions, like we'll see what she comes back next time if it's really nice and cool, like blonde still, but not super warm. So that's what my goal is for this service, is to kind of combat and tackle that yellow or warm tone that we have. I really hope the blonde solution prevents it from going brassy again. But I mean, when you are flat ironing your hair every day too, you know, that takes into consideration. But that's just stuff that you have to explain to your client, which sometimes is hard for them to deal with, is such a drastic cool tone from their natural hair, but a lot of warmth from the previous color that they had. That can be hard for them to kind of deal with if they're not tackling the whole transformation in one service, which can be very time consuming and very expensive. So for some people, this is an easier way to go about it. They just have to know it's like 2 to 3 services before they might be really happy with their hair. So here's the full application that we ended up doing. And this probably took me maybe like an hour and a half, maybe not, maybe a little bit less to get everything in. And I'm going to show you guys the raw lift with the blonde solutions, because somebody bit my head off last time that I washed my client's hair out and I showed it after using Phenolic No Yellow shampoo. So I'm going to show you guys what her hair looks like, and you can see how it kind of has a tint to it, and that kind of is what toned the hair. So look at her hair here. You can see how nice that lift is. Her hair literally looks like it's glowing. It's kind of fluorescent looking. And the last time you can see those ends in there, that's from using the Schwarzkopf. That's because it doesn't tone the hair as it's lifting. So that's why it was yellow. So here's what we're going to tone her hair with. 10V, 10PA, and a little bit of rose gold. And the 10PA and the 10V are half and half. And look at how nicely that toned out. So I really like those toners. It's just the nice little bit of a cool blonde, but I didn't add any 9 in there because I don't want it to go too dark or anything. So just the 10V, 10PA is perfect for like a nice cool blonde, but not super ashy. All right, so now she's all styled. We're gonna comb through her hair, spray it. I use the Kenra number 25 spray. It's a little bit heavier of a hold. I know people ask sometimes, so that's what I want to let you know is this hairspray that I'm using is Kenra number 25. So you can see those highlights up at the top just blend really nicely in with her natural hair, and it doesn't look like she has silvery hair. It just looks like she has a really nice, pretty, really cool blonde tone. So I feel like our goal is accomplished. I feel like we're at a good place where, you know, she doesn't feel like she has gray hair anymore. So here's her before again, and then here we come into the after. I love it so much. I feel like we got not like super way brighter this time, but I feel like we're just at a perfect blend. Like that blends so nicely with her natural, and then we really got rid of a lot of that warmer tone that was in through the ends, and I feel like everything just looks perfectly. It blends so nicely, and I feel like her ends are a lot less warm. So our goal is accomplished, and I feel like this service would maybe take like 2.5 hours at the most, and a good price range for this would be like $175 to $200 for a gray blending service, for anybody that's interested. So thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.